She loved to paint flowers, and I'll show you in the other room some jonquils that were in the Brooklyn Museum of Art in the 1920s. And florals were one of her favorite things to paint. She was a fascinating woman. She always said, give me 30 minutes to pack and I'll be ready to go anywhere. And she did, and traveled a lot, and she'd paint when she got there. Carrie Hill was one of 6 children. She was born to her parents who lived in Vance, Alabama. Her father had married a Vance, and they lived there until she was 16 years old. And because there were better employment opportunities in Birmingham, the family, mother, father, and all 6 children moved to Birmingham in 1891. As soon as they moved to Birmingham, the circus came to town, the Cole Brothers Circus. And Uncle John, my grandfather's youngest brother, was fascinated by the circus and ran away with them, left home. Carrie finished high school. She found out about art classes being taught by an artist who had come from New York, who had trained at Yale, and she learned the basics about paint and canvas paper and the basics of art, really. She found she really loved painting and wanted to learn more about it. So early on one summer, she went to North Carolina for the summer and studied with a famous New York artist, Elliot Dangerfield, who had come down from New York to be in cooler climes in the summer. And she learned a great deal about technique and coloring and so forth. But it led her to seek other instructors and teachers, and she went to New York and studied with a painter there who was just beginning to experiment with Impressionism, and she loved it. She loved the colors and the brightness and the sense of ambience that the Impressionist painters had. She learned about a teacher who had founded the West End Art School on the tip of Cape Cod in Provincetown, George Elmer Brown, and she arranged to spend the summer at George Elmer Brown's school, the West End Art School on Cape Cod. And this really changed her life in painting. She discovered Impressionism at his school and loved it much more than the standard type of painting that was prevalent at that time. And she also found George Elmer Brown was a very effective teacher. And so she went with him to Europe on 3 occasions. In the 1920s, she went in 1922, 1925, and 1929. And in 1929, they stayed a whole year in Europe. After the 29 trip, George Elmer Brown tried to convince her to move to New York and said she could have a great career and would be famous and would be much more likely to sell paintings and to have a great life related to art. But she decided not to do that and to come back to Birmingham. After her mother and father died, she was able to get a studio in the Hood building downtown, and her studio was 3 rooms basically. One was her living space, and it had Tiffany lamps and things she had brought back from Europe, brass and leather and all sorts of objects of art back that she had in this room. The middle room was the kitchen and the bathroom and so forth. And the other room was a large studio that had great big windows that opened up on 5 Points south and had great lighting, and that's where she taught and where she painted. She didn't go to church, but we picked her up every Sunday coming home from church, and she came, had lunch, and spent the afternoon. And she and my grandfather reminisced about their lives and then of her experiences, which were so broad. The Birmingham Art Club formed in 1907, and their main goal was to get a museum of art. They hooked up with other artists throughout the Southeast, and they were very active in seeking to get a museum for Birmingham. These women of the Birmingham Art Club were none of them married. She felt she would be giving up her freedom and her, she'd be have children, take care of children and so forth, and she wanted to focus on art. People bought her art. She was selected to paint a big, huge mural in the Woodlawn Library about the Mother Goose is still there in the Woodlawn Museum. She painted a second mural in a school in Jasper with the Pied Piper, and the school burned, so that mural is gone. She had a painting that went to the Art Institute in Chicago, and she was very proud of that. She loved to paint pine trees. An interesting story, one of my cousins, about my age, she was going to paint their house, and she had him cut all the vegetation and stuff around the yard and make it look really nice and pretty and pristine and whatnot. And then when he saw the painting, all of the vegetation and the tropical plants and things were back, and he was just furious because he'd spent all that time clearing it up, and she had gone and painted it like she wanted to. But that's the type of person sort of she was.